Hello, viewers. This is a special emergency transmission. We hope that things turn out to be a false alarm put up by the Mexican U.S. government, as well as the British government, the United Nations, World Health Organization, and others. I'm going to be here live for the next 2 hours, and we're going to be opening the phones up coming up in about 30 minutes. And I'll give you that special in-studio toll-free line. We will not be using the Genesis phone numbers because this special transmission is only at Infowars.com, PrisonPlanet.com, on the audio streams for radio listeners and viewers at PrisonPlanet.tv. Again, thank you so much for joining us this evening with this important news and information that needs to be covered. And I will be asking later in the show for callers from Mexico City, South Texas, Kansas, Montreal, Canada, New York, and other areas where this new strain, this hybrid strain of bird flu, swine flu, i.e. pig flu, and human flu, a mixture from Asia, Europe, and North America. It's very rare to have a mutant strain from two different animals that actually can hurt people. And then to have it from 3 different continents and mixed together and being generated from a single nation is really amazing. So we've got a ton of important information to cover on this front, all the latest news for you tonight. Let me just go over some of the headlines. I'm going to break down what I believe is really behind this and what we're facing. Mexico's Calderon declares emergency amid swine flu outbreak. They've basically locked down Mexico City. They're putting people in quarantine who have the flu. There are reports coming out that at least 68 are dead. Some reports are now saying it's over 200, but that they're covering that up not to create a panic. We'll get into that from the BBC as well coming up. Again, Mexico may take more flu control steps, Calderon says, expanding government power. Reuters headline, global flu pandemic fear grows, more U.S. cases. Venture capital firms set to reap rewards of the swine flu outbreak. Again, Mexico may isolate patients with deadly swine flu. Then you read the articles. That's out of the New York Times. They're already doing it. Officials, 8 New York City students probably have swine flu. It's confirmed in Kansas, confirmed in South Texas towns, San Antonio, Texas, confirmed in Canada, in Montreal. So that is some of what is coming up. Headline, deadly flu strain erupts in Mexico, U.S. Now, why is this so important when we have headlines like this one out of MSNBC? New U.S. swine flu cases spread pandemic fears. Why is that so important? You'll notice that I haven't really, over the last 4 or 5 years of all the bird flu fear-mongering by the governments of the world, spent a lot of time on it, but in the last few months I have, because we've seen preparatory conditioning in the media for a controlled release. I've seen signs in the propaganda campaign that made me go on air in the last 2 months and say that I believe they may have some bird flu, swine flu scares that are preparatory trial balloons to test the public to see if the establishment wants to indeed release a controlled pathogen into the general population. There's a lot of facets to this I'm about to go over. So be patient here. This is all important. I'm going to try to be as calm as possible to cover all this in detail. We have to remember that the 1918 Spanish flu that killed between 40 and 60 million people, historians and governments argue about that. We have to remember that between, well, some estimates are higher, but at least 40 million people died, and that broke out on U.S. military bases simultaneously in separate geographic areas. Clearly a bioweapon. We know that the Army 9 years ago dug up the Spanish flu, went to whaling sites in the Arctic coast, and dug up dead whalers that had been frozen in the permafrost at the different cemeteries that had the very deadly strain of the bird flu, of the Spanish flu in them that killed over 40 million people. Now, why couldn't they just get it in the environment today? Because it mutates. Viruses always mutate. They mutate to a point, some of them that become deadly or damaging to humans or other animals that they're attacking if they're zoological. But when you have a really big pandemic, especially, they mutate very, very quickly because there's so much of the virus out there. They're always changing their form. That's why a lot of top scientists have looked at HIV, the virus that supposedly causes AIDS, and have said that it's weaponized, because you notice it's been around for 30-plus years now, and it just keeps on killing. It's really just a name for a class of weaponized viruses, and we have the U.S. Patent Office documents on that in the congressional funding. It's the Weaponized Cancer Virus Research Program. They just had the anniversary a few days ago of Dr. Salk's polio vaccine that gave over 200 million Americans the SV40 deadly cancer virus that the government admits has killed millions and millions of people with the formerly rare cancers that are now very, very common that it causes. It's also found in all major sewer supplies of the world, from India to China to the United States, because it is communicable and is continually passed on. But thank God it has mutated and is not as deadly as when it was first given. But sometimes it mutates to not be dangerous. Sometimes it mutated to be more dangerous. A lot of scientists believe in studies that's actually causing a lot of the autoimmune type diseases we're seeing. But that's amongst others. I'm just giving you some background records. Remember Tuskegee and the black men giving them syphilis, letting them spread it to thousands of people, die over 45 years, painful deaths. You know about them nerve gassing U.S. troops and British troops in Tasker, the foster system grabbing children and radiating them to death. And oh, you didn't know about that? Just Google it. It's mainstream news. The Department of Energy has all these apologies and letters and websites about it, and they admit they did it. So to sit there and say they don't do this when there's thousands and thousands of programs, tens of thousands of separate cases alone in those thousands of programs that are declassified, for me to sit up here and talk about this could be the government is the first thing we should do. You know, they've had two releases in 2001 and then again last year out of the Portendown Bioweapons Lab, zoological lab in England. And then suddenly, simultaneously, it spreads all over England to the cows and sheep in just a matter of days in separate sites hundreds of miles apart. And it's a weaponized form. And we knew it was weaponized and said it was, and it came out it was. And they said, oh, somebody snuck out of the lab with it. And simultaneously, this one rogue person went to hundreds of farms. And I mean, come on, folks. And then the government admits they released this deadly horse flu in Australia. And they say, oh, some bad employee that's an environmentalist snuck out and gave horses all over Australia, thousands of miles apart. It all pops up at once. This is done by design. Now, I have some of the history of that. They had another, after the Spanish flu, they had a swine epidemic in 1918 that killed several million people worldwide. 600,000 died in UK, France, and Germany alone. 548,452 died in the U.S., so just we'll say millions worldwide. That was the second one.